Right at that moment, Biggie turned around and realized he was surrounded by a crew of shooters in a city that he didn't know, and that his life might end right then and there. Everybody knows that the Notorious B.I.G. holds the title for the King of New York. Even after Biggie was murdered in '97, the debate that rang out for years revolved around who would replace him as his heir. When Jay and Nas went head to head, it was mutually understood that they were battling for Big's crown. And while Biggie's legacy will always be tied in with the East Coast West Coast beef and his feud with Tupac, a lot of fans don't know that B.I.G. almost lost his life over issues with another West Coast legend who might not be as well known but was very influential and almost took Biggie off the board. I'm talking of course about E40, who at this point has held down the Bay for damn near 40 years. 40 almost took Big off the board after he showed up to the Bay unannounced after throwing major shade on 40's name. Getting into 40's past, he is the origin story of a true hustler. He came up from Vallejo, California, where he started recording music and selling tapes out of the trunk of his car. One thing that really sets E40 apart from the pack is that he always had a vision to go along with whatever moves he was making through music. By the time the 90s rolled around, 40 expanded his footprint from Vallejo into San Francisco and launched his own record label, Stick With It Records. 40's business moves gave him a platform to build his own solo career, dropping his own album in '93. That year also gave E40 his first breakout hit, Captain Save-A-Ho, which he released with The Click. Not only did Captain Save-A-Ho light up charts and radio, but its staying power held to the point that it got on the GTA 5 soundtrack. People are still using Captain Save-A-Ho as slang to this day. This is what E40 is legendary for. Something he could say on a record can become slang worldwide. Skrilla, broccoli, those terms have 40's fingerprints all over them. 40's story was way more of a slow grind. Yeah, he had hits like Sprinkle Me and Ballin' Out of Control, but it took years, real years, for him to gain the same kind of recognition that his contemporaries got. It wasn't until 2006 when he released Tell Me When to Go with Lil Jon that he really started seeing the mainstream success that would make him recognizable. That's almost a decade after Biggie died. Part of the reason for this is because 40's style is it's a little unique. Even if you didn't know much about the man, it was clear that 40 was certified and respected in the area, which is something Biggie did not realize. While 40 was bubbling out west, Big had become a superstar by the time he put out his first album, Ready to Die, in '94. Biggie's name definitely carried more weight when it came to who was a worldwide celebrity. But he clearly knew who E40 was, because when Biggie was asked about 40 during an interview, he had no problem completely shitting on his whole come-up-in style. Legend has it, B.I.G. sat down for an interview with a Canadian magazine around '94 or '95 and was asked about his opinions about other rappers. Big gave his thoughts about the competition, ranking other MCs from 1 to 10. Everyone from Too Short to Redman to Tupac were brought up and ranked during this interview. When the journalist asked about E40, Big went savage mode and said, quote, "0 rating, 0, I don't f with Duke at all." News got back to the Bay that Biggie kicked dirt on not only 40, but the entire movement that he spearheaded for his area. The consensus in the street is that Big's loose talk had to be dealt with by any means necessary. After the fallout from that interview, Big got booked for a show out in Sacramento. His crew pulls up to the venue only to find out that it's a warehouse and the crowd is hella dead. Like 10 to 15 people type dead. This is where you gotta give it up to Big, cause not only was he in hostile territory, but he decided to rock the show anyway even though the crowd was severely lacking. Little did he know the whole situation was a setup, and that could have been the last show that he ever put on. When Big hit the stage, the crowd started throwing coins at him. Biggie and his crew decided to dip, but when they rushed outside the venue, they realized their limo driver had vanished. All of a sudden, things get active. Trunks start popping, guns start cocking. When they turned around, they found themselves completely surrounded by hitmen, armed to the teeth. Big and his team were forced into the empty limo, pretty much taken hostage while these shooters scream at them about the Canadian article where he talked wild about 40. While being held at gunpoint, the Sacramento crew manages to get E40 on the phone and passes the line to Big. The conversation resolves with 40 giving Big a pass and telling the shooters to let him go. 40 even claimed that he escorted his team to the hotel to make sure they got back safely. Years later, E40 spoke on the whole situation in depth and claimed that he didn't have anything to do with the fake booking that got Big set up in the first place. That whole scheme was put into motion without 40's involvement. Some shooters in the area felt Big needed to pay for the disrespect and made all the necessary moves to catch him lacking. Just so you know how deep 40's respect runs in the Bay, where he doesn't even need to play shot caller. He just has people who will do it for him. E40 went on to say that he disagrees with the idea of taking someone out just because they don't with your music. What's even crazier though is that the interview that kicked off all this drama might not have even been real in the first place. The legend of Biggie running his mouth on the article has been passed around for a while, but it turns out no one's really came forward to take credit for the article's origin. The only thing that gives the article any type of weight is the fact that E40 is mentioned in it, and it directly almost caused Biggie getting taken off the board. Regardless if Big really did disrespect E40 or not, the consensus is they put aside any beef and looked for ways to start collabing with one another. Unfortunately, as we all know, B.I.G was assassinated in LA, and any plans that he and 40 had of them working together never materialized. Even though their careers had radically different trajectories, you gotta give credit where credit's due. They both changed rap in undeniable ways.